I lied, 1.3 and 1.4, simple random sampling and other effective sampling methods. So, simple random sampling. A random sampling is the process of using chance to select an individual from a population to be included in a sample. So, random sampling selects an individual using chance from an entire population. A sample of size n from a population of size large n is obtained through a simple random sample if every possible sample of size n has an equally likely chance of occurring. In this case, the sample is called a simple random sample. So once again, the important part here is that every group has an equally likely chance of being selected or occurring. So technology can be used to create simple random samples by assigning a number to each individual in the population. Then they use a random number generator to select that sample. Two simple random samples of the same size will likely result in different descriptive statistics because they will most likely have different individuals in that sample. As we continue in this class, we'll get into more details, but just a general idea, we need to know the difference between a random sampling and simple random sample. So let's look at an example. So the pharmacist typically fills prescriptions by scooping a sample of pills from a larger batch that is in stock. The pharmacist thoroughly mixes a large batch of Lipitor pills and then selects 30 of them. Well, you guys, she starts out with a group of pills, and everybody in that group has the exact same chance of being selected because we are talking about a group and then selecting an individual, because first we do talk about its group. Let me change it from a highlighter to a pen. I don't know why it's sticking to a highlighter. There we go. We've got our pen. First, we've got our first batch of Lipitors. That was our group. Then out of that group, we select an individual from those 30 that we selected. Because of this, this is going to be both a random sample and a simple random sample. In this next one, in order to test for gender gap in the way that the citizens view the current president, the tokens company polls exactly 500 men and 500 women selected from the US. Do they then assume that the number of adult men and adult women are the same? Well, in this case, we are going to be just a normal random sample. The reason behind this is because not every sample of 1,000 adults, so we're talking about 500 women, 500 men, we're talking about 1,000 adults from the US. Well, not all of those adults have the same or an equal likely chance of being picked. We do not know that every individual has the same chance. So this one is just a random sample. It is not a simple random sample. Y'all, I know this one's confusing. Don't spend too much time on it. You will not be tested over it in my specific class. Next, normally we would talk about an activity break here if we were in lecture, but because I can't get all of you guys to stand up and do a group activity, we are going to just move on. So now I would like to talk about our different types of sampling. Excuse me. Stratified sampling is when we divide the population into subgroups so that each subject within the same subgroup share a characteristic, like age or gender. After we break it into those subgroups, we are going to draw a simple random sample from each subgroup. So first, with stratified, we break it into a group. And then we pick an individual or a random sample. For systematic, what we're going to do is we're going to select a starting point, and then every case element in that position is the one we're going to pick. The definition of cluster is when we divide the populations into sections or we group them. So here we have our group. Then we randomly select from one of those groups all of the members of those selections. Then finally, we're going to have a convenient sample, where that literally is just whichever one is most convenient to us. One thing we do need to consider is the sample size, and we'll get into more details about the sample size later, but we do need to know some sample size constrictions or some considerations. That during the sample, determining the sample size is key in the overall statistical process. Researchers must know how many individuals they must survey in order to draw a conclusion about the population within some predetermined margin of error. The reliability of the results may depend on how much time and money is available for these samplings. So that is something important to note, but we will need to know about these different types of sampling. These 4 are important, and then we will add in a 5th or just random sample. So because we couldn't do that activity, what I've done is I have gathered a zoo for us. So this is my little zoo, and I'm going to cover or go over the different types of sampling. So let's talk again about let's first talk about stratified. Once again, stratified is first we have to group everything that they share a characteristic. Well, in this case, I'm going to group all of my different animals. So first, I'm going to group my elephants. We're going to put them all over here. I'm then going to maybe group my monkeys. They all go over here. My lions, my giraffes. Get them all grouped together. We've got our ostriches, some more giraffes. We can put our monkeys up here. We've got our lions roaring. All right. So I have now grouped all of my animals by their characteristic or the type of animal that they are. Now that we're grouped, I am going to gather a simple random sample from each subgroup. Or in each group, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to randomly pick a few. Maybe over here, I'm going to pick this elephant. I'm going to pick these 2 giraffes. I'll pick maybe this monkey and this monkey. I'll pick this lion. And I'll pick these 3 emus. So the way I've picked these individuals is through a stratified measure. First, I grouped them with similar characteristics or the type of animal they were. And then I chose random samples or random individuals from each of those subgroups. All right. Now I'm going to go back. And we're going to talk about a different type. So we're going to put everything back to where it was. All right, went a little bit too far. So here, once again, are all of our animals all hanging out at the zoo. The next type that I want to talk about is systematic. And right now, it's pretty easy to do systematic. I would normally ask for a volunteer to volunteer some random number. Because I have no one in the class, I'm going to choose the number 5. Just randomly, I like that number. I chose 5. So when we're talking about systematic, I'm going to choose the 5th animal down the line. So I chose the number, let me first pick my number. I picked the number 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This monkey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This lion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This giraffe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And lastly, this lion. So I would use this emu, this monkey, this lion, this giraffe, and this lion as my sample in this systematic way of picking my sample. That was my systematic. Next, let's talk about a cluster. So once again, I've got to divide them up into groups. So I'm going to do that. We're going to say, once again, we've got our elephants. We've got our giraffes. We're going to bring these lions back down. So we're going to get our groups together. Got our emus down here peeking around. Got some monkeys saying hello. All right. So I've got my groups sorted back again. If you notice, they do not all have to be the same size. But now that I've got a group, what I'm going to do to take this sample is I'm going to select all. I'm going to select maybe all of the lions. I'm going to select all of one group. So as you see in this case, we've decided to do a sample by cluster. A cluster is when you divide into groups and then pick everything in one of those groups. Then finally, the last one to really talk about is convenience. So if I get these guys all lined back up, convenience is almost the easiest one. It's not always the one with the best data, but it's always the easiest. And when I'm convenient, I'm just going to go through and maybe select the ones that are easiest for me. That's it. And those are different ways of selecting different samples. All right. So next, we're going to do some examples on our own. We're going to have 5 choices. It's either going to be random, systematic, convenient, stratified, or clustered. So let's look at this first one. In a study of college programs, so we're studying college programs. 820 students are randomly selected from those majors in communication. We've got 1,463 selected from business, and they selected 760 majoring in history. So what they did first is they grouped them from their college program. We have our different groups. We have communications, we have business, we have history. After they did that, they selected individuals. They selected individuals from each group. Well, because they selected those individuals, We did a group and then individually selecting from each group. This is going to be stratified. This one is going to be stratified. The next one. One day of the last presidential election, ABC News organized an exit poll in which they specified polling locations were randomly selected and all voters were surveyed. So first what they did is they did it into groups of specific polling locations. So we grouped by polling location. They then selected all from one of those locations. Well, because they put it into groups and then selected all, we are indeed this time going to be a cluster. So hopefully what you're seeing is the difference between stratified and cluster. They both are going to break them into groups first. But with stratified, we select individuals from each one of those groups. Whereas with a cluster, we are going to select all of one of the groups or maybe two. So we look for that keyword all for cluster. Next, at a police sobriety checkpoint, we are going to stop every 5th driver. Whenever we see a number followed by a TH, we are most likely talking about systematic. We are counting how many till we pick our next guy. The next one. In a Gallup poll, 1,003 adults were called after their telephone numbers were randomly generated by a computer. 20% of them said that they got their news from the internet every day. Well, this is the answer. I don't really care about what happened after you polled them. I care about how you polled them. Well, you just randomly selected these 1,003 adults. You just did it randomly. Because of that keyword random, what we're going to say is this was indeed a random sample. Then finally, Literary Digest magazine mailed 10 million ballots to potential voters, and 3 million responded. Well, it was just easy for them to do. They automated it. They got some mailing service to do it for them, and it was just easy or convenient. It was convenient to mail out all of those questionnaires and just have people respond as they may. So as we see in this last comment, they want us to given that the sample is so large in number 5, we want to know if it is reasonable to expect that the sample would be representative of all of the population of voters, why or why not? Well, you guys, a lot of time when I'm talking about this, instead of talking about Literary Digest, I like to think about Teen Magazine. So let's think about, I think that's what it's called, Teen or 13 magazine. 13 magazine. And let's say they mailed out ballots to all adults with a mailbox, all homes, for 10 million people. And they asked if you like bubblegum lip gloss. Now, those who really, really like bubblegum lip gloss, maybe are 13-year-old females, they're going to come in and they're going to talk about it, and they're going to mail back their response about how much they love that lip gloss. You might have another 12-year-old somewhere who hates it. They think it's the worst flavor in the world, and they're going to mail in and complain about that lip gloss. But I guarantee that most of those 10,000 or 10 million ballots they sent out, people just don't care about lip gloss. They're going to see that piece of junk mail and they're going to throw it away. So, really, the issue with sending out ballots to that entire population is those who are going to respond are only those who feel strongly either for the lip gloss or strongly against the lip gloss. Those who really don't care aren't going to respond. So, with these convenience studies, when you send out a ton, 10 million different ballots, well, what you get back, if it's voluntary, may not be a great representation of the entire community or the entire population because some people might just not care enough to respond. Y'all, that is the end of this lesson. Once again, if you have any questions, please let me know.